Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're taking a look at Legolas. I've been working Legolas myself now for about the last month since I returned from the summer tours, and with the idea of helping Amber bring him up into the upper level so she can begin to feel a higher level of collection. So this is Amber's first day back on the horse after me riding him for about 3 weeks now and putting her back on. So we've done the walk work already and just have gone right to the trot here so you can begin to see how that looks. So we can see this is the first trot after the walk, so we've just brought him up a little bit. He's not in a complete collection yet, but you can see how beautifully this big horse now comes up into that perfect frame there. Watch the back end and see how the hind legs are always coming through at the exact same angle as the front legs. And how completely flexed he is. Now remember when Amber got this horse, he had already been broken over in the neck, so it took us a while to heal that. Now in last winter, just as an example, he got some very deep-seated abscesses last winter. So he had a little bit of time off, probably about 3 months, and lost quite a bit of condition. So this is just him coming back after that. He finally got over it all there and started working back maybe about 2 months or so ago. So he's had about 2 months or so back, pretty much the time that I was on the summer tour there, or spring tour, so to speak. And Amber was bringing him along slowly, and as I said, I took him over about 3 weeks ago so that she could experience this. And look how beautifully and steady he's going in the bridle. Like once in a while you'll see him drop a leg here or there, have a little bit of unsteady step, or you'll see him maybe get a little bit over the bridle. But look at how he sinks down behind now. Remember, this is just the first section of the trot work here. It's going to get better as we go on. So my ideas was that, as I've told many of you, I'm working on a series called Bringing Your Horse into Collection. And I've been filming every day that I work with this horse, which will ultimately go into this much bigger collection called Developing Collection. But I wanted you to see the result of that work. Now look how light he works through. Notice how as he comes through there's no change in the rhythm as he goes into that shoulder in there, as he comes down the long side. You can see he resists. There's a little bit of struggle there for a moment. He kind of loses his balance there for a second. But he regains it rather quickly. And once again, you can literally see the wave underneath this horse lifting her up and bringing her forward. Now notice that as we continue here, you'll notice that there'll even be more flexion in the hocks and there'll even be a little more lifting. So here we come back to the stretch. So that was just our first little section of trot work. And we always come back and give him a deeper stretch. And once again, this is a perfect example. Now during this winter time, he kind of, and the time that he had off as they're recovering from these deep abscesses that he had in his feet. We had a really rainy winter here last year, and that always makes a big difference in horses when they stand in that, and it's just wet all the time, and some of them get them worse than others. But look how beautifully the stretch has come all the way down to the neck. And notice that there was almost no change in this horse's trot at all between the stretch trot and as we start to bring him up. He continues to just stay up, and you see how he continues to lift the front end off the ground. But while giving him that stretch, we refresh those muscles and bring the blood back into those muscles. And once again, now look how much more thrust he has now than he had just a moment ago before that stretch. So the thing to understand is the collection is something that when the horse can do it, they will do it. You don't have to fight a horse into collection, as you can see Amber doing here. There's no fight involved with it. When they have been developed physically correctly to do it, the horse is just capable of doing it one day. Just like with this one, we hardly cantered this horse. We're really only now starting to canter him a little more. We kept trying to come back to the canter, and he just wasn't strong enough. Remember, this is a very big horse. He's almost 18 hands. He's much bigger in person than you see him here. And it just took a long time for him to mature. So he's about 8 years old now, so he's really finally coming into maturity and having the strength to really hold himself together in the canter, and you'll see that today too. His canter is finally, after it's been about 4 years now, really developing into the contact. And now what you'll see is this horse, now that he's developed collection, everything will just fall into place. I was able to do flying changes on him last week without him running off. Remember, his problem was when he came to us, he had learned to bolt, especially in the canter. So you never knew when he was just going to kind of take off with you when you tried to do canter work, and especially when we tried to do flying changes on him. But now that he's so settled in the bridle and over his back, all that is completely disappearing. So once again, notice how beautifully he goes into that stretch after that work. There's no change of rhythm. I mean, once in a while you'll see a little bobble here or there when he hits a bad spot in the ring, but you notice how it stays basically the same. And look at the flexion of those hocks now. And this is a horse that is by nature fairly straight behind. So the difference that it makes, if you saw this horse, if he's not over his back, you know, he's about a 4 mover. If he's over his back, he's an 8 mover. So what a difference it can make. People think their horses can't do things until they get them over their back and find they're much better movers than they think they are. And once again, look how beautifully and easily he comes up into this frame. Now there's a good working trot, and then all she has to do now is begin to stretch up a little bit. And all he does is stretch up, and he'll start to lift up right underneath her, just like that. She gets a little pluck underneath. Remember, when we want lift out of the horse, we have to be able to get our legs underneath them and give them a little touch. Now, you'll notice sometimes that Amber's legs look a little busy on him, but if you go back, you'll see that one of the problems with her is that, you know, she's not that tall a person herself. But as an example of how people develop, if you went back and looked at her much earlier videos, you'd see that her leg looked much shorter than it now does. And you can see that he kind of flattens out for 1 second, but she gives him a little touch with her leg, and that brings him right back up. Look how lovely this medium trot's going to be here as he starts to swing through a little bit, and we see him lengthen through from behind. Not the biggest one yet, and he got a little bit flat on that one. So she'll bring him back here and just ask him to come up underneath again. But look how steady in the bridle, how consistent the rhythm, and look at how light. Remember, this is a very big horse. And he's now going on the weight of the rein in this frame. There's no pullback, there's no constant tension on the reins. All you have to do is lift up and restrain with your back a little bit, but not push with your back. Biggest misconception about the seat is what it does. If you push down on the horse and push through or push at the horse with your seat, all it's going to do is hollow its back. So look how beautifully that transition happened there. Came up a little bit too high, but she softens him right down. He stays really nicely on the bridle, and notice that that canter stays right uphill now and how balanced it looks. Because he can, and as I said, we really have hardly cantered this horse at all. You know, throughout the years of training him thus far, we would work on the canter for a while, and I would say, no, it's just not ready to be there yet. And it's only now that we're really starting to get this horse really through the back in the canter, and you'll see how quickly he will develop now that that has happened. But they all develop at a different speed. This one is a very big horse, and once again, the bigger they are, the slower they are to develop. And we just have to accept that as a rule. Now look how beautifully he's starting to lift up here as she stretches up, and look how he's able to maintain that flexion all the way through to the pole. Notice the underside of the neck also. It's got complete relaxation, and how easily he just goes right back into the stretch. And this was a very big horse. He's a very big horse, and he's a little narrow in the chest. I don't know if that had something to do with it or not, but once again, he doesn't look that narrow when you see him here. But he looked quite narrow in the beginning. And he was a difficult horse to actually get the stretches all the way through. I think it was mostly because he was just such a big, growing teenager that it just took him, you know, a few years to grow into himself. And now that he does, I think he'll be able to basically do anything at all. I have started him piaffe, and you'll see that on the video, once I produce the big video called How to Develop Collection. Or Developing Collection. I haven't quite said on the title yet, but something like that. See how she lets him just straighten out. Look how beautifully he lengthens in that stretch across the diagonal. That should be something we always come back and practice. If you find you stretch the horse down and you can't get him to come through in a nice little lengthening like that, he's probably not going to do that when you bring him up into a higher level frame. So we always get the best lengthenings, the best medium trots, and the best extended trots after we get the horse to come through in the stretch. Because remember, we never want that trot where the horse just throws its front legs out the way we see so many people doing today. And of course, that's what destroys the horse's legs. As soon as the horse disconnects between the front and back end, you basically let no shock absorbers, and you're overflexing all the tendons. Look how nice that is once again, how she just stretches up and how he comes right back underneath her. Look how light those reins are. And notice that he's now in a snaffle most of the time now. I do school him occasionally in a double bridle. I did that to start the canter work because he's just so difficult and heavy and with his tendency to bolt a little bit. But look how he keeps springing. You can always see this horse. You watch those hind legs. Watch as he push off each individual leg. You can almost see the wave come up underneath her and lift her forward as each individual step in turn lifts the front end off the ground. Once again, nicely into that canter. He always was a horse that he wanted to throw his head, so this is coming around really nicely. He's finally settling into that bridle. He learned some pretty bad habits before we got him, unfortunately, about the canter, which did make things a little more difficult. I say every time you canter a horse, it bolts off with you. It makes it a little more difficult. But Amber's done a wonderful job here, and she's having a wonderful ride today. Well, that's how she goes large here. Now you watch, she makes a downwards transition here at the end of this, and he starts to stall just a little bit. But notice how she's able to put her leg right back on, put him right back up into the bridle again. You see, watch how it kind of stalls out there. Wasn't sure what she wanted there a little bit. Well, look how beautifully he comes through now in this medium trot. And how easily he comes back afterwards. So you notice how little struggle there was with any of this. There wasn't a lot of stopping and reining back and all the things that we see people do and jazzing them up and this sort of thing, thinking that they need to be hot to be able to do dressage. And look how beautifully he comes back into this last little bit of collection here before we walk him. And once again, look at the engagement of that top line through the entire neck, and notice how completely relaxed that underside of that neck is. She goes back into the stretch. Look how little difference there is in terms of how much swing there is, the depth of the swing, and how he stays balanced in the stretch over all four legs. So even when he has his head all the way down there, you can still see him lifting and thrusting up to the back and lifting the front end out, up and into the air, so to speak. And watch as she brings him back one more time. So this is Will Faerber with my associate trainer, Amber and Legolas, doing a wonderful job on her horse, demonstrating collection for you today. Look how easily he comes up and shows you how easily it is when the horse knows how to do the job. Will Faerber, once again, look forward to seeing you all soon. Look for my big video. That'll be out probably not till I get back around Christmas time or something, but developing collection. See you all then.